Hello and welcome to Viewpoint on Ukraine today. My name is Sam Kearley and right now I'm joined by Ricardo Flores-Artola from Zee Medical. Ricardo, thank you very much for joining us today.
Thank you for having me.
So you are an experienced combat medic. You served for many years with the with the American Armed Forces. You went on combat deployment in Somalia, Afghanistan and Iraq. And now you've been brought to Ukraine to share some of your experience and your knowledge with the frontline medics that we have here in the country.
Yes.
In your experience, what can you say about the current knowledge of tactical medical training within the Ukrainian Armed Forces?
I've seen a lot of great progress from the first time I came here, which was about 2 years ago. There are individual companies and individuals that are pushing these evidence-based practice guidelines to help improve survivability on the battlefield.
Okay, so you've been coming here for the last 2 years and you say you've seen some great progress. So where are we at the moment?
I think you're still in the early stages. The adoption of a lot of these guidelines hasn't been fully implemented. I think there's still shortages of equipment for the Ukrainian soldiers, but the knowledge base is being provided. And I think that Ukrainian military is moving in the right direction. Okay.
So can you break down tactical medicine for us? What is it and why is it so important?
Well, tactical medicine is a combination of things, but most importantly is maintaining situational awareness of the environment that you're dealing with. So when you provide medicine in the hospital, it's completely different than when you provide medicine on the battlefield. So
you're not being shot at in the hospital.
Exactly. So tactical combat casualty care is broken down into 3 phases. The first phase is when an individual is taking effective enemy hostile fire. So you're under immediate threat. At that time, all you can do is return fire to try to suppress the enemy or neutralize the threat. And the only medical treatment that you would do in that situation is maybe put a tourniquet and drag the casualty behind cover and concealment. And that's one of the differences, because a lot of people that have not been to combat view combat like in the movies, where you see a guy that gets injured and the medic rushes out in the open with a hail of bullets, all heroic. But if a medic does that, he becomes another casualty. So you need to understand that in the real combat, you have to suppress the enemy, neutralize the enemy, grab your casualty, and take him behind some cover and concealment.
Okay, so when you are here in Ukraine, you are working with Patriot Defence, a non-profit organisation, and you are providing your experience straight to the soldiers that are out there on the front line.
I do it in partnership with Patriot Defence. I come once or twice a year to the Ukraine, and so even though Patriot Defence and the instructors are making great progress, sometimes they don't see it as much as I do, because I come back 6 months later and I see the big differences that they have made strides in.
Okay, so a few moments ago you spoke about equipment. Are the soldiers or the doctors that are out there with the soldiers on the front line of the conflict, do they have the equipment which they need?
Currently, there is some equipment out there. I don't think that all the units are equipped properly yet. The other thing with the equipment that people need to understand is that the tourniquets and the hemostatics need to have science and evidence behind them. The U.S. military didn't implement these tourniquets and hemostatics without doing independent testing and evaluating in a laboratory, in a clinical environment. And now, after 14 years of warfare, we have extensive experience in the efficacy and safety of these tourniquets and hemostatics in the battle environment.
So you are training the everyday procedures which will be followed by the American Armed Forces to the Ukrainian Armed Forces?
Yes, but I'm not part of the Department of Defense. I'm a civilian, part of a civilian company called Zee Medical that provides the primary hemostatic for the Department of Defense, called Combat Gauze.
Okay. So what is Combat Gauze? What does this do? How does this help?
So Combat Gauze is utilizes an active agent called kaolin, which is a mineral that once it comes in contact with the blood, it helps expedite the speed of clotting, and it makes the blood clot stronger, so it helps stop the bleeding on the battlefield.
Okay, so where is the combat gauze coming from? Is this coming from the United States to Ukraine?
It's manufactured in Connecticut. It is been available to the Department of Defense for the United States since 2008. It is part of the kit that every soldier that deploys to combat has.
Okay, so 100% of soldiers going over to the east of Ukraine would have combat gauze?
At this time, I'm speaking about the United States kit. And the Ukraine, that's still not available to every soldier.
Okay, so can you break down a situation where this would be vital to use? So if a soldier takes a gunshot wound, and then what is the process then? How much time do they have? How is this used?
So combat gauze is one of the tools that you would use for hemorrhage control, right? And as I mentioned before, it's situationally dependent. So during the different phases of combat, when you're taking effective enemy hostile fire, the only thing you do is suppress the enemy and maybe put a tourniquet. Once you drag the casualty behind some cover and concealment, now you can take more time and provide more definitive care. And at that time, you would determine if the tourniquet was necessary or not necessary, and you can use this hemostatic for femoral or arterial bleeds that are aggressive and you need to control rapidly.
Okay, so if this is used effectively, what is the success rate, talking about percentages?
So there's different studies, but it's over 90%. There was a study that was conducted by the Mayo Clinic in the United States in ambulances where the protocol was to use standard methods to control the hemorrhaging. And if those were not successful, then you would utilize tourniquets or hemostatics. Combat gauze was 95% effective in controlling bleeding after standard bleeding protocols were not effective.
Okay. So if you were able to give some advice now to Ukraine's Ministry of Defence on where they should be focusing their attention in terms of training their doctors and providing them equipment, what advice would you give them?
The first thing I would say that these are basic skills that doesn't require a trauma surgeon. An everyday soldier, if you can train a soldier to pull the trigger, you can train a soldier to put a tourniquet and to use hemostatic to stop the bleeding. Besides these basic skills and the basic equipment, I think that the warrior that's defending your country deserves at least the basic skills to save his own life or his buddy's life and the equipment to do it with.
Okay, so we're running out of time. Ricardo, could you just tell us about your plans for the future? Do you plan on coming back to Ukraine?
I hope to come back in June. They're having a competition in tactical medicine during that time, and I've been invited to be a judge of that competition. And again, I believe that that's part of the great success of the implementation of tactical medicine. This will be the second international competition that I've been invited to be a judge of, and I'm interested to see the capabilities of the Ukrainian military to compete in that event.
Okay, and just one final question. When you first came here 2 years ago, you must have had some objectives in your mind of certain things which you wanted to achieve. Could you tell us if you have achieved these and what they are?
Well, one of the great privileges of my position with my company is I get the opportunity to conduct training worldwide. And I've always heard of Kyiv, and it's a beautiful city, and every opportunity that I get, I enjoy coming back here. But as far as my objectives, it's just to share my knowledge and to help provide. I get a sense of satisfaction that I get to share that knowledge and help save Ukrainians' lives.
That's fantastic. Ricardo, that is all we have time for. Thank you very much for joining us today.
Thank you.
Thank you. You have been watching Viewpoint on Ukraine today, where we have been joined by Ricardo Flores-Artola. Thank you very much for watching. Just stay safe.